Hi, it's Brianna.
It's Matt.
Alright, so today Matt is drinking.
Shatter S'mores, which was a seasonal beer that I don't think is in season anymore, and it's a yearly thing, so since you missed it, if you didn't try it, I'm sorry for you, because it was delicious.
But try again next year. But today we're going to talk about the different styles of powerlifting. I'm a raw lifter, meaning I don't use anything extra besides wrist wraps and my Inzer belt for deadlifts. And then Matt is...
I lift multiply, which multiply refers to the thickness of the gear. Essentially, prior to about the time that CrossFit became really popular, most powerlifters were either single ply or multiply lifters, and then people started getting injured doing CrossFit because that's really what CrossFit's good for, is making you snapped up really fast, and so you get injured doing that, and then you're like, oh hey, let me do powerlifting, and then they're like, oh well, now I have to buy all this fancy equipment. Let me lift in this division called Raw, where you don't have to, where you buy a wrestling singlet and a belt, and you're good to go. Versus me, I lift in multiple ply compressive gear, which allows you to lift more and to be safer while you're lifting more weight. So essentially, I lift in multiply gear because it's more fun, it's more dangerous, and I can lift more weight.
And I lift raw because I'm a newbie, so I still need to get technique and everything down before I start putting on gear and everything, which is a whole different ballpark of learning how to work the equipment and not injure yourself in that process, whereas I'm still working on not injuring myself in the raw process.
Yeah, raw powerlifting is where most people get the intro to powerlifting, especially today, where raw is the more popular way to compete in powerlifting. Which raw powerlifting, there's different rules different equipment rules based on each different federation, but generally the best you're going to get on openpowerlifting.org, which is, if you haven't been to openpowerlifting.org and you're interested in competing in powerlifting, go to openpowerlifting.org, search your age, search your equipment class, search your weight class, and see how you stack up with everyone else in the world, and you can see about how competitive you would be on a state and local or national, world, however level. Don't worry about the worlds yet. You're not Dave Hoff. I'm not Dave Hoff. But anyway, most people, if they're competing raw, are going to be competing in either nothing covering their knees or in knee sleeves.
I don't like knee sleeves or knee wraps.
Yeah. Knee wraps are the way to go. If you can compete in a federation that allows raw with knee wraps, which I compete, and she's about to start competing with RPS, or Revolution Powerlifting Syndicate. They're really nice because they have a raw classic division, which essentially means no knee wrap or knee sleeve, just naked knee. And then they have a raw modern division, which is either raw with knee sleeves or raw with knee wraps, which, if you have the option between sleeves and wraps, go with knee wraps because they will help you lift more, because they're better at compressing and supporting the knee joint. The problem with knee wraps, you want to explain the problem with knee wraps?
They are very painful. You have to wrap them so tight.
Yeah.
Like, first time he ever wrapped my knees, literally was tearing up.
Yeah.
Sitting on the bench, I was like, I wasn't expecting that. It's a real shell shock, I guess, or shocker, whatever you want to call it, shocked me. It's one of those, though. I personally don't like it, but I just have to get over that eventually.
Yeah, I was like looking down, wrapping her knees, what I considered a moderate level of tightness, and I look up and she's like in tears. I'm like, oh my god, let me get this thing off of her. And these are like the flimsiest, cheapest pair of knee wraps that I owned. And suddenly, like, I'm like, oh, that was a bad idea. But
I'll get there one day.
yeah, but a lot of people, if you're lifting, a lot of people, the biggest federation, if you're not familiar with federations, the USAPL, which is the American affiliate to the IPF, is the biggest and most popular federation in the United States right now. I don't know if you're one of our Canadian or British followers, fans, viewers, what have you. I'm not really sure what the equivalent's in Canada, the UK, Germany, wherever. But there's probably a national equivalent that has the same rule set. You don't have to worry about knee wraps because in the IPF rules, only equipped lifters wear knee wraps, and only equipped lifters can only lift single ply, which is a single layer of material for your bench shirt or your squat suit. So
it's raw,
either raw classic, raw modern, or raw with wraps, single ply, multiply, and then in the multiply, sometimes you can have as many layers of equipment as you like at the pro levels, but typically it maxes out at 3 because any more than 3 and you're never going to get to depth in a squat and you're never going to touch in a bench shirt, which that's really the harder part of equipped lifting is actually getting to depth, which personally a lot of people consider equipped lifting to be cheating, which, yes, the weight is heavier than you can lift raw, but I say if you're lifting raw, why are you wearing a belt, and why are you wearing knee sleeves, and why are you wearing wrist straps? You're equipped. You are an equipped lifter with those things. Take those off and show me what you can do without any any supportive equipment, and then we can talk. But I wouldn't consider it cheating. I would consider it the rule set for that equipment class. But the harder,
it's just like anything.
Yeah,
there's rules and all that for.
Yeah, for anything you're doing.
And I have tried one of his bench shirts before. And it's very difficult to learn how to actually.
Yeah, there's this very.
You have to learn how to work it all.
Yeah.
And if you're super confused, he has visuals for everything he's talking about for equipped.
Yeah. So essentially, let me pull this over here. So, this here is my bench shirt that I'm using right now. It is the Inzer Super Duper Phenom. It is the most expensive, top of the line bench shirt that Inzer makes. It doesn't have a back because backs don't really do much of anything. It just has these Velcro straps at the bottom to keep the shirt generally in place. If you'll notice, it has been stuck onto my squat suit, which is the Velcro on there. But if you'll notice, it has this big dog collar here, which various levels of bench shirts have various thicknesses of dog collar, or super necks as they're called. I call them a dog collar because it looks like a dog collar. So essentially that is, you're stretching out that collar, you're stretching out the sleeve, you're stretching out the chest plate to essentially create a bow, like a bow and arrow, that's building up the tension in that shirt, so the weight that you can't control without the shirt, you can bring down, but it's going to be harder to get down to the chest. It's going to be harder to get that touch and harder to actually, successfully execute the lift, because in powerlifting, you have to bring the weight to the chest. It has to sit at the chest until the judge says press, which depending on the federation, which depending on the judge, can be as soon as it rests on the chest for a split second, or it can be 2 to 3 seconds, depending on who the judge is, and what kind of day they're having. That's why we compete. Why I compete in the federation I compete in, because the judges are usually pretty good about giving a fast press command for bench. Essentially, raw lifting, the hard part is getting the weight off of the chest. That's kind of where you're struggling right now, is
hit and miss.
Yeah, if you're getting the weight off of your chest, if it's coming about 3 inches off your chest, you're probably gonna lock it out, right?
Yeah.
Versus me, that weight, that shirt is creating like a bow and arrow effect. So as soon as I get the weight down the chest, it's gonna pop off, and I'm gonna have to control the shirt. If the weight's heavy enough, I'm gonna have to press that as well. But you have to start pressing. You have to catch that press, and the hard part's gonna be locking it out at the end. And because the shirt is going to stop helping you as much the higher you go up. So I can handle a heavier weight, but that weight is going to be really hard for me to press out for those last few inches, which is why I really enjoy it, because it's not necessarily just how strong I can be. It's how strong I can be and how effective I can be with my equipment. Like I say, some people would say, yeah, that's cheating. But if I would compare it to racing or drag racing, raw powerlifting is taking your street stock Ford Mustang and racing it against somebody's street stock Dodge Challenger, whereas single ply gear is top fuel. Or funny car racing, whereas multiply gear is top fuel drag racing, just absolute top power, and you have to control that equipment, and a lot of things can go wrong in that equipment. So it's much more skill based than just strength based, because the grooves, like for the bench shirt especially, I'm sure I'll be having put up some training footage soon, but the groove for the bench shirt, if you've ever done the bench press, a raw bench press, you have a lot of room to kind of wiggle in how you execute the bench press. The bench shirt, it's one solid groove where you have to ride the tension of the shirt, and if you get too high, the bar's gonna knock your teeth out. If the bar gets too low, get out of the groove that way, you're gonna get hit in the belly and or lower, and it's not going to be very pleasant at all. Might throw your shoulder out of place with that bar hitting out of the groove there. So you've really got to ride it, and you've really got to trust your spotters. I've had some really bad spotters before when I've been benching equipped. And it's a bad day if you have bad spotters, which is why I'm super, super picky about who I have spot for me, even if I'm benching raw, because I don't want somebody who doesn't have me when they say they do. So that's the equipped bench. The equipped squat, it's a lot wider than, or multi-ply squat. Single-ply squats are kind of similar to a raw squat, whereas a multi-ply squat is going to be super wide. It's going to be more of getting your knees out wide and sitting back, because the suit will help allow you to sit back into the squat and get a really wide base, and break. And the hardest part about it's going to be breaking depth until the weight gets really, really heavy, and that's going to be really difficult to lock out the squats like it is the bench. But like my last meet I did, was it a 585 squat opener?
I think so.
Yeah, it was 585 squat opener. My second attempt was 630. Hit all, 6 white lights, or, if you're not familiar with the sport of powerlifting, the judges, you have 3 judges, each of them grades you on the lift. If they give you a red light, they count it as a no lift. If it's a white light, they count it as a successful lift. You have to get at least 2 white lights. And my third attempt was going for 670, which would have been just a massive PR for me. 630 was a PR as well. Personal record for anyone who's not familiar with the lingo, just getting into the lifting world. But I was high. They counted me as high because I just couldn't get down any further because I hadn't set back as far as I needed to. Even though I thought I did, but I couldn't really tell because you're in so much gear that's bunched up so tight that it's hard to really feel it out. So I would have called it. Did they give me all 3 reds, or
I think you had 1 white.
I got 1 white. So if somebody would have been in a little better mood that day, I would have had like a 90-pound PR that meet instead of a 50-pound PR. Either way, I'll take it. But again, like, the depth is really the tough part for an equipped squat. Whereas, a lot of the problem with the raw squat is going to be, can you get out of the hole for the depth? But generally, as long as you know what depth is, you're going to be okay with a raw squat.
Show them the gear you use for squat.
What's that?
Show them what you use for squat.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So, first off, there's a base layer. You got your squat briefs, which these are the Inzer Predator briefs. These are kind of a new brief for me. They're almost like the bottom half of a squat suit. Got these kind of power bands at the bottom, or at the back end, kind of like so you can sit back. And these are a little loose for me. I could probably go for a size smaller, but essentially they're going to be compression underneath your suit. Most multiply rule sets allow you to have double ply pair of briefs, and then under that. Get off of there. And over that, I have the Inzer Leviathan, or this is the Leviathan Pro, and this is essentially a canvas pair of lederhosen for all intents and purposes, and they've got this paracord on the side. So, like, regular squat suits, like especially like a single ply squat suit, is incredibly difficult to get into because they have to be super tight. Because that's how they work. They compress against your body. That way, your muscle isn't necessarily fighting the weight coming down. It's the suit doing that for you. So the muscle is more fighting it coming up and making the weight move for you come on the concentric part of the lift when you're after you've gotten into the hole. So that suit's really nice because those paracord sections you can spot adjust exactly how tight you want it to be in certain places. So for an opener attempt for squat where I need that suit to be a little more forgiving and giving me the depth that I need, I'll leave the hip section completely open and won't tighten it up, and then kind of tighten it up a little more as I go into each attempt, so that will give me a little more support and help me out. Still give me more support, but giving me enough support where I can still hit depth based on the weight and based on the tension of the suit. And along with that, get some knee wraps. These are Inzer Atomic wraps in 3 meter. I use exclusively Inzer products for my powerlifting gear. I use Inzer squat suit, Inzer bench shirts, Inzer knee wraps, Inzer wrist wraps, and they make good stuff. Those knee wraps, I was using the gripper wraps, which are essentially, if you'll notice, you see here, these are like rubber bands kind of woven into the back of the knee wrap. So they're super, super tight and stiff. Like they're elastic, but they don't move much compared to some other ones. Like I had the gripper wraps before, which are the yellow ones. They only had the rubber on the center portions. So a little more pliable, a little easier to stretch. But used these yesterday for I was just in my briefs and the knee wraps, and I had just a ridiculously easy like 500 and something pound squat between the band tension and the bar weight. So highly recommend these if your federation allows them. Well, find a federation that allows you to lift it with the knee wraps and use these, or use the gripper wraps if you're not quite ready for something a little sturdier.
And do you use anything for deadlift?
Deadlift, generally, again, if you watch any of my other videos, I'm not a fan of the deadlift. I'm just not personally, that's personally my least favorite of the power lifts. But they do make a deadlift suit that's wide, like got super wide straps compared to the straps on these, which, so they'll be like really wide straps and kind of work to bind against you, so you'll pull down into it, and generally works a lot better for sumo lifting. But I'm not a sumo deadlifter. Sumo's never made sense to me. So if I'm going to deadlift equipped, if I'm working in a full power meet, I'll just wear my squat suit because I don't want to pay another couple $100 extra for a deadlift suit when I don't really care that much about the deadlift. And the deadlift is really where you don't get the best carryover from powerlifting gear or from equipped lifting. You might get a little carryover, but it's not nearly the carryover that you'll get from a bench shirt or a squat suit. For instance, raw with wraps, I can lift probably around 480, 500 in a squat. Just conservative guess based off of the last Circa Max work I did. Basically like really heavy bar with a lot of band tension, as well as we're roughly about 500 pounds of weight there. And I bench probably around 355, 360 raw. Deadlift, my max PR deadlift was about 510. I don't get any carryover in the deadlift between my gym max raw and my meet max in gear. My bench, I get a roughly 80, probably looking at about 80 pounds of carryover my next meet, which that's really low for the shirt I have, but it's a new shirt. Still really learning to use it effectively, and the better you get in the shirt.
Use it 3 or 4 times.
I think it's 3 times. I worked in one is just really to break it in because I've got this meet coming up so fast. But the Inzer SDP, great shirt. Really easy to use compared to some of the other bench shirts I've used before. Really low collar, really works well for breaking in. But the better I get in that suit or that shirt, the bigger my carryover is going to be, to where 5, 6, sometimes 7, 800 pound benches are not uncommon and multiply bench shirts these days, which sounds insane, but if you just see some of the engineering that goes into this and the amount of time that guys learn to work in their gear, it's just astounding. And then the squat suit, I probably, I was raw, like I say, I raw squat about 500 on a really, really good day, and probably about 670 with a little more depth, so about 150, 175 pounds of carryover, vaguely, which again is low, but then again, right now I've been training, I've done all my training in commercial gyms, and one thing about raw lifting, especially multiply lifting, a lot of the times you'll see in a commercial gym or like a USAPL or USPA meet or basically a federation that doesn't have multiply gear, you'd be squatting out of a regular squat rack, kind of a standalone squat rack as opposed to kind of the cage you see in most of the gym. And you can't really do that in multiply gear because you're so bound up. You're a knight in canvas armor. So you've got these knee wraps on, you've got this suit that's binding up on you. So for multiply gear, we use a monolift, which is essentially 2 hooks with a barbell on it, and somebody is there with a handle, and after you squat it out, the hooks swing out, you do your lift, you don't even have to walk it out. It's super simple. And then after you're successfully completed your lift, or after the lift takes place, however it goes down, the arms swing back and you rack the bar that way instead of having to walk back, squat, come up, walk forward, and rack it. And the cool thing about a federation that has multiply lifting, if you're doing a meet that has like RPS, they have all of their equipment classes in the same meets in the same day. So somebody who is lifting raw gets to use a monolift, which you want to talk about a monolift versus a squat rack and your thoughts on that, your experience?
I used a monolift for the first time yesterday. I wasn't really even supposed to squat yesterday, but he wanted me to practice in one so I could just know what to expect and everything. And it's amazing. I did my first and second attempts kind of not in my full mind frame, but I nailed them, and it was just so much easier not having to walk it out. Like, it was kind of like at first you're like, okay, squat. But, I mean, it's really nice. Like, you're not near as tired as walking it out and then getting situated and all that craziness.
Yeah, and
if you can find a monolift, I recommend it. Just to try it, because you might have a bigger max than you think.
You definitely have a bigger max than you think if you're squatting out of a monolift.
Mm-hmm.
Like the first time I tried squatting out of a monolift, I was like, "Whoa, what's happening? This feels really weird. It feels really good that I don't have to be burning all this energy to walk this weight back." But it also feels really weird in the fact that you're used to doing something. If you're not used to squatting out of a monolift, you're used to doing all that walking back and then bracing, as opposed to just, okay, here's the bar on my back, I'm going to brace, I'm going to squat it up, they're going to move things out of my way.
The only thing I found that I have to concentrate on this next couple of weeks is knowing my placement already when I'm under the monolift. So I kind of readjusted, but I didn't move back or anything, but I just got to make sure my width for my legs are where I want them to be and everything, so I'm not having to waste energy, even though I'm not walking back, but you know what I'm saying.
And
so makes you really focus on that.
Yeah, and if you're competing in a federation that has a monolift, and allows you as a raw lifter to not walk it out, don't walk it out. Like, just let them swing the arms out for you and squat it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it can throw you off if you're not used to it, but just get used to it because you'll lift heavier. Or do it
like in your mind, like pretend you're walking out.
Yeah,
or
just make it a visual thing. Just like squat it out.
I'm a visual person.
Yeah,
so.
Squat it out, or like pick it out of the monolift, brace, squat, rack. It's too easy. And personally, I think anybody who still walks the weight out when they don't have to is just costing themselves pounds. And, well, that doesn't make sense to me. I don't know why anyone would do that.
Makes sense to him. But, yeah.
So, anyway, anything you've noticed in the way you've been training raw versus the way I've been training equipped?
What do you mean, like differences?
Yeah, like how, like for, like what you've seen kind of as somebody who's never really trained equipped versus like seeing how I train, differences there, like for the bench, like what
there's a lot more setup for him and his bench cert. I have to squirt him down with some water.
Yeah.
He has to pretty much stand there and break it in. Well, not break it in, but like just get into the groove of it. Whereas I just put my little wrist wraps on and I'm like, all right, here we go. And it takes him a lot longer versus me. And then he's really got to rest. Like I rest in between sets, but you really got to rest.
Yeah, because
and the equipment.
What the bench shirt is doing, or any of the gear is doing, is just binding around you, and it's super tight. The tighter, the better. Like my bench shirt right now is not super tight, but which tells me I need to do some bodybuilding and grow, so I can make that shirt tight, so I can get a bigger bench. But you come down and it's binding, and it's causing like rashes and
Sorry.
It's been a long day. We had a really hard training session over at Metroflex in Arlington. If you haven't been, it's one of my favorite gyms of all time to train at.
It's a nice change.
But anyway, before I was so yawningly interrupted, the bench shirt creates all kinds of rashes, all sorts of like not really cuts, but more like abrasions in the skin, like bruising. It'll beat you up, and even like, I mean, I could probably do 5-6 reps and just be absolutely exhausted from the way that the shirt works against you, and just how much time you have to spend like getting into the shirt.
Yeah.
Which I mean, I'll probably have a video of me demonstrating how to effectively get into the gear, because that's really not like. One of the reasons I was so excited to start this channel was there's not a lot of information out there about equipped powerlifting, which is because there's really not a lot of raw lifters. So we'll probably have a lot of equipped lifters.
It's been a long day.
There's a ton of raw powerlifters because it's really easy to get into raw powerlifting. It's really easy to do raw powerlifting. However, I lift all the time. I lift raw all the time. So
he likes a big challenge.
It's a challenge for me.
I mean, raw is a challenge for me right now.
Yeah.
So, but
when you learn to lift raw and you get strong and raw, then raw gets boring. She thankfully hasn't had to make the financial investment into not being bored because raw powerlifting gets boring anymore. One fun fact about equipped powerlifting is expensive as hell, which is a huge barrier to entry. Like my current bench shirt is about $350 after shipping. My current squat suit was over $400.
Oh my gosh.
And knee wraps $75, briefs $140. So it's not a cheap sport, but that's kind of the price I pay to be able to lift really, really heavy and have that sensation of
reach his highest potential.
Yeah,
that he wants to reach his goals.
Yeah, well, more like I could have raw goals, which would be cool, Don't get me wrong. Anybody who lifts lifts in raw powerlifting, I'm not knocking you.
Yeah.
I just wish y'all would understand that the difference is I lift equipped because it's an additional adrenaline burst when I take out
Sorry.
when I take out 650 pounds in a squat versus when I take out 450 pounds, because 450 pounds to me in raw gear is still heavy, but pulling it out of a rack or taking it out of a rack feels like nothing compared to what I can pull out when I'm equipped. So way bigger adrenaline rush, way more dangerous, which is fun. I mean, anything that's safe is probably not very fun. So,
safe is fun for me.
I mean,
that's the difference between us. I play it safe. He's like, whatever.
Well, we're gonna get her into gear at some point.
We can't talk about it till after the first meet. So I don't know
she's got her first. She's got her first meet where she's competing raw. So we'll see how she likes that, and then go from there. And as far as getting her into multiply bench shirt at least. So.
Yeah.
So yeah. Bottom line. Both styles of powerlifting, or all three styles of powerlifting, because I would consider single ply and multiply two completely different ball games, because, well, there's a lot of technique differences. Single ply gear doesn't give you near the bonuses that multiply gear gives you, and raw you get none of those fun things that single or multiply gear give you. All three styles are
different.
They're different, but all valid forms of powerlifting. Multiply or equipped powerlifting, single ply, and especially multiply have gotten a really bad rap recently because nobody understands it. Who's not in the powerlifting world? A lot of people they can watch the CrossFit Games, or they can watch raw powerlifting, and they see, oh, that person's doing a squat, that person's doing a deadlift. I've done those in the gym. I see that in the gym all the time. However, it's very rare for you to walk into a commercial gym and see somebody in a multiply bench shirt. Unless you train where we train, because I'm in there in a multiply bench shirt. So it's something that people don't really understand, something that people don't really want to invest in, and it's kind of still a very much stereotypically powerlifting, which I consider stereotypical powerlifting to be the fat, bald, bearded guy, which I wonder who that could be, who gets into equipped powerlifting, because there's a screw that's loose and they want to lift more. They want to be able to lift more than their body can really handle, so they put on loads of gear and wrap themselves really tightly with things to make sure that they can handle that without dying, which is always good. So anyway, anything else you want to think we haven't covered about raw versus equipped? Or
no, I think raw's pretty easy to understand, and there will be more videos about equipped and everything, and all that. More details on using them and videos to go with it, helpful hints, all that. So
yeah, and like I say, this is
more
kind
videos of me yawning. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, apparently she doesn't get very excited about equipped powerlifting like I do.
Sorry.
Thanks, really supportive.
I'm sorry.
But anyway, yeah, like I say, a lot of my impetus for starting this channel was getting more functional, practical, equipped powerlifting knowledge out there, because there's not really a lot of it. So along with the how to get into your bench shirt videos, there'll also be some training footage where I'll hopefully talk about how to use the shirt, how to groove it, how to set it, various settings of it based on the weights,
and all that.
How to use the gear, because I had to learn most of it myself from very limited amount of information. So hopefully trying to make that easier for other people and trying to get other information out there so people will make that jump over to equipped powerlifting, because I consider it a whole lot more fun and a lot more exciting than lifting raw. So anyway, look for that in the near future, and we will catch y'all next time.
Don't forget to subscribe.
Oh, and hit that bell. Apparently that's important these days, because YouTube doesn't like telling you when people actually upload things. Yep.
And I still can't figure out how to look at subscribers, so YOLO.
Anyway, I'm not going to creep on our subscribers, so I'll let her have fun with that. And, yeah, I'll catch y'all next time.
Peace.